In this video, I'm going to show you how to effectively and quickly set up your Blender UI to make it ready for modeling. And I'll show you exactly how I do it. It's really easy. Let's go. I'm going to be using Blender version 4.4 alpha, but it doesn't matter what version you're using. It's really important not to get hung up on Blender versions. They're usually minor changes between them, so it doesn't matter, if you're using 4.0, 4.2, 4.4, or 7.8. The only big jump was between 2.7.9 and 2.8, and after that, like I said, minor changes. Don't worry about it. Now, if you're new to Blender and you're still struggling with understanding how it all works, we have a fantastic course which will teach you everything: the UI, the tools, the menus, but more importantly, we're going to teach you modeling, design principles, and also how to produce really cool renders for your portfolio so you can get recognition, jobs, and followers. So click the link in the video description, grab the course. It's superb. We have thousands upon thousands of students and hundreds upon hundreds of testimonials. You can check them on our website. So again, click the link in the video description or the one in the pinned comment below the video and grab the course and join the fun. Now let's go back to our video. This is a splash screen. They have two different splash screens in Blender, and this one you're gonna see only once when you open Blender for the first time. Now, I never really choose any of these options or change anything except for one thing, and the one thing I'm changing is the spacebar action. This by default will assign a play button to your spacebar, and it's not a good idea because you can press it by accident and you're gonna play animation in the background in Blender, and this could interfere with different things, like for example add-ons. So I would disable it and assign here search button. So when you press space, you're gonna have a search. This might be more convenient for you, especially as a new user. You click on spacebar and you're gonna have the search tool. Now there's one more thing I wanna mention here, and it's this option here, okay? You wanna stay away from it. It's going to ask you if you want to load in or import config settings from the previous version of Blender. You can have multiple versions of Blender installed on your machine. I got 7. And when you, for example, have 4.3 and you download and install 4.4, 4.4 is going to have a separate config folder. So the Blender is asking me if I want to import config files from my previous Blender version. Don't do this, because especially if you're using add-ons, there might be changes in code between versions of Blender. If you do that, you might have conflicts. Ignore this and install and set up everything from scratch. That's my advice, okay? So other than this, you can also change here from Blender light version to dark, which I think is better. And that's about it. The rest I just keep as default. So once you're done here, save new preferences and you're good to go. And you click off of this here and you're done. Now when you're gonna open Blender again, another splash screen gonna appear. It's really annoying for me, so I want to turn it off. So I'm gonna go to preferences, I'm gonna go to here interface and turn off this splash screen here, okay? Then click here, uncheck this auto save preferences. You want to have control over what preferences you're saving. Save preferences and close the window. Now we're gonna set our UI. Click here, press A to select everything. You see it's gonna be highlighted in orange. Press X and delete all this rubbish, you don't need it. Now at the bottom here, there's the play bar for animations. We don't need that. So we're gonna hover over here, right? Click, left mouse button and drag it down, right? Like this, and release, okay? And you're gonna have a clean window. Another thing we need to change is the resolution of the UI because it's a bit too small. So go to Edit, Preferences, and here on the top, I switch it to 1.4, Save Prefs, and we're good to go. Cool. So now we can actually set this up. So middle mouse button, rotate here, and now we can actually save these preferences. So go to File, go to Defaults, Save Startup File, and Overwrite, and you're good to go. With these preferences saved, you're not only going to be able to reopen Blender with the same settings, but also in the same place on your desktop. So if you, like me, and you're using, I'm doing this for recording, I'm using a smaller portion of my desktop to open Blender. So if I close this, you can see that it's just a portion of my desktop being recorded. If I'm going to reopen it, it's going to reopen exactly in the same spot. So this option here, Save Startup File, It's going to save all the options that you changed. Like you see the viewport, the timeline, no cube, no lights, no rubbish in your scene, but also the place on a desktop, which is really important, especially when you're recording videos. Now let's change a few more things in preferences. So let's go here and go to navigation, and we're gonna change these. You wanna turn off auto perspective, which is really annoying. It's going to change between perspective and orthographic when you rotate your camera. It's infuriating. What you want to do is you want to enable this, which is orbiting around selection, and this depth. Now these two options, what they will do, and remember to save preferences every time. First one is going to allow you to rotate around selection. So when you have a selected cube, you can rotate around its origin point, which is in the middle, this orange dot, right? It's important. It's really, really important for many things, modeling, camera work, etc. And the depth is going to allow you to quickly zoom in and out easier, closely to your model. If you do not turn it on, Blender is going to slow down and kind of like get stuck in the mud eventually. It's really annoying. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to change the colors of our display because I don't like them. So go to edit preferences, and we're going to be changing a few things. You don't have to follow me, but let me show you how it's done. Anyway, go to themes and go to 3D viewport. Now what I'm going to change here is the object selected. I want it white. I want active object to be white as well. I want my vertex to be white. I want my edge to be white. And also I'm going to change a few face settings. So here I want it to be slightly bluish. And I'm going to copy this color to my face mode selection, so here. And you can see that when you're going to go to tab and press 3 to activate faces. So there you go, it's going to be slightly bluish, right? Then scroll down, and what you want to do is you want to also increase sizes in here. So first of all, the vertex size should be 7. Otherwise, if you go to vertex mode, so press 1, you see they're really, really tiny. You can barely see them. It's very difficult to model like this, okay, or see issues. You want to bump it to 7. You see, that's much better. Now I can see them clearly. You also want to dot, the face dot, to bump it to 7. And another thing is the object origin, which is the one in the middle, bump it to at least 7, so it's bigger. You can easily see that, okay? So we can save preferences and we can close it. So now our colors are set. Next thing what we're going to do, we're going to turn on face orientation. So go here and turn it on. This is going to show you when your mesh is flipped inside out. So let me show you. We're going to tab, press 3 for faces, click on this one and delete it. You see that all the faces inside are red. Because mesh in Blender has two sides, okay? Positive and negative. Negative is red and it's supposed to be facing inside of your model. So if your face, let's go to Alt N menu, is flipped like this, you're gonna have problems with bevels, modeling, booleans, anything, okay? You wanna make sure that all these red faces face inside of your model. So Alt N again and flip, right? There you go. So that's the correct orientation. The reason why we turn it on is because you wanna see immediately when you're modeling, when you have an issue with the mesh. So let me show you. Go to edge mode, right? Select these. I'm going to bevel them. And I'm going to grab this face here. I'm going to insert it and you watch. When it's going to flip, I'm going to see red bits popping here on my mesh. And that means mesh got flipped. Because bevel here just simply went underneath itself and flipped the geometry. So if you're going to see that, it's a problem. So you want to have this thing turned on at all times. Now, word of warning, in previous versions of Blender, I think they fixed it in this version because I can see that alpha is slid to 0. You actually have to slide alpha on the blue-purple kind of a psychedelic positive face orientation to 0. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing this. So let's go to viewport. Let's scroll down to face orientation front. And if you're going to slide the alpha to 1, that's what you used to see in previous versions of Blender. So I don't know if they listened to my whining in videos, because that's what I was suggesting from the beginning in every single UI setup. So, you know, if they did, great. I wish to listen to more advices I gave. Anyway, so let's just save preferences and you're good to go. So next time you're gonna have issue with the mesh, bevel, or whatever, you will see this immediately and you can address it, okay? So keep it. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to enable cavity. And let me show you why it's important. If I'm going to rotate my mesh like this to maybe this angle, you can barely see where this face ends and where this face begins, because there is no really any bevel on these edges. You see, edges in Blender are infinitely sharp, and because of this, there's no separation between them, so at certain angles it's going to be very difficult to see, and it's really tough to model. You want to always see the outline of your model, the design language. So what you want to do, you want to enable cavity. Now I usually do it with hard ops, but you can also do it here. Go here, click on cavity, and all you need to do is just click that button. And you see now we have these beautiful highlights on your mesh, and it's going to stay there and it's going to help you to model it. So the bevel is just a highlight, okay? So once you do that, what you want to do, delete that cube, go here, and save startup file. So now when you load your Blender, you're gonna have all these settings, your new UI colors, face orientation, and cavity setup. Next, what we're gonna do, we're gonna enable extensions and add-ons. And if you don't work in Blender with add-ons, you're fired. Go to Edit and Preferences and enable online access. You need to enable online access in order to download all the extensions that come with Blender. If you're working in previous versions of Blender like 4.0, I think, and before that, you didn't have to do this. Also, there's only one tab, just add-ons. Now we got extensions and add-ons. Don't ask. So allow online access and just type here loop tools, okay? And you're gonna see loop tools popping up. Click on install, and the add-on's gonna be installed. Now go to add-ons, type loop tools, and make sure it's actually installed, because in Blender 4.3 you actually have to click on this check mark in order to enable it, which is crazy. But hopefully, from what I'm seeing, they've changed it and auto-enabled it on the add-ons, which is great. So that's your first extension. This extension is very useful. It's going to allow you to work with loops in Blender, and it's really important add-on to have. Another one which is really useful for working with nodes is going to be Node Wrangler. Okay, so go here and type Node Wrangler, and you can see it's not here. Node Wrangler became an add-on now, so you have to go to add-ons and type here Node Wrangler and enable it as an add-on. And it also comes with Blender, which is really confusing. Don't know why they did that, but that's what it is. Okay, go back to extensions and type F2. This add-on is going to help you to work with faces. Install. Now let's check if it's actually enabled here. It is good, so it means that 4.4 Blender, it's gonna be auto enabling extensions, which is great, because again in 4.3 you had to go back to add-ons and manually enable it, which is nuts. Right, so let's go back here, and now we're going to enable another add-on which is called Edit Mesh Tools. Install this, then another one's gonna be 3D Print Toolbox. This one's gonna help you to clean mesh, which is really good. It's mostly for 3D printing, but I'm using it for cleaning mesh. Another add-on that's important is gonna be Bool Tool. This one's gonna allow you to use shortcuts with booleans. So if you're not using add-ons like Hard Ops and Box Cutter, which you should, that's gonna be your friend. And am I missing something? Loop tools, Node Wrangler, F2, 3D Print Toolbox, Edit Mesh Tools, Bool Tools, I think. Oh yes, Copy Attributes Menu. This one is really good. It's gonna allow you to copy modifiers, locations of objects, rotations, etc. Very useful add-on. Now, you're done, save preferences, you're good to go. Remember to go to File, go to Defaults, go to Save Startup File, and overwrite it. We're not done yet. Now we're gonna set up our render engine. So go here to Preferences, go to System, and here we're gonna do two things. Here under Undo Steps, change it from 32 to 256, put whatever number, 256 is max. Now next you wanna enable CUDA, which is gonna be enabling your graphic card for rendering, which is important because we're gonna be using GPU for rendering. Do not enable your CPU, it's going to slow things down. In fact, what you can do is enable optics, which is going to make things a bit faster, but when you're using card like 4090, it doesn't really matter. Save prefs, you're good to go. Next, we need to set up the render tab here. So go to render, go to EV, turn that off and turn cycles on, change CPU to GPU. And then on the sampling, you don't really want that many samples in viewport. Your computer is going to be using GPU power to recalculate in real time your viewport. You don't need that. 256 max. You can probably go with 128. Now this one is insanity. You don't need 4096, you need 300 or maybe 350 unless you are rendering ArcViz. That's different. But if you're rendering regular renders with decent lighting, that's all you need. Make sure you keep the denoise on. This is important. It's gonna denoise your render at the end of the scene. Again, if you're rendering ArcViz, this might be different. Next, light path, important. You could keep it on default, but I would suggest lifting these to 6. You could also drop this one to 8 if you wanted to, the same as transmission. My settings, although, are very different. I'm using 18 and then 16, 16, 12 and 12. If you're rendering with volumetrics, enable it as well. Important, right? The rest, I don't touch it, okay? Then let's go to output, which is here. Usually I'm rendering in high resolution, so it's gonna be 2560 by 1440, which is the same as the default because it's 16:9 ratio, but it's high resolution. I prefer high resolution because it allows me to basically have more pixels to edit. Now, in terms of output here, I change it to TIFF, I change it to 16-bit and no compression, and this is what I would suggest you use. You could go with OpenEXR, but honestly, I never had a need for that. Again, if you're not rendering ArcViz, you don't need it. So these are settings that I would go with. You want 16-bit because you want a lot of information in your TIFF in order to edit your renders, because you have to edit your renders. If you're not editing your renders, you're fired. So then we good. We can collapse this and go back to render tab, and you can open sampling here and you're good to go. You can go here again and save startup file. If you're not using our add-on MaterialWorks, which by the way will allow you to set HDRI automatically by clicking a mouse button without needing to set up any nodes, changing anything, and I'll show you. So if I go here to Blender 4.3, you can see our add-on. All I need to do to add lights is just click this button, and then I can choose whatever HDRI I want. I can change rotation, strength, etc. And if I switch it off, it's going to default to basic Blender node setup. So you can switch between our add-on HDRI or just the default one you have set up in Blender. But if you're not using it, you wanna set that up. So let me show you how to do it. You go here on the bottom until your cursor changes. You pull your window up like this. Then you go to shader editor, change to world. And now we're going to be using this add-on that we installed called Node Wrangler, which allows you to add nodes to this window here with one click. We need 3 different nodes here for setting up HDRI. So click on this node here on background, press Ctrl T, and these 3 nodes appear. Now, when you're going to go to render, everything going to be psychedelic blue or purple, whatever, because you don't have any textures assigned to this node. So what you want to do, you want to actually load in HDRI, and the HDRI I suggest you get is called Abandoned Slipaway, which is a very good HDRI. It's going to give you a superb lighting for most of your renders. The renders you see on your screen were all created with this HDRI. It's fantastic, and it's also free. Go here to Abandoned Slipaway, go to 4K and download it. Once you download it, all you need to do is go here, go to the place you downloaded it to. So in my case, it's gonna be under my HDRIs. Click on it, open it, and you got your lighting. Now, what you also want to do, you want to remove it from the preview. So go here to film, which is here, and turn on this transparency, which is going to remove it from view, but keep the, it's going to keep the lighting. So now you can use these nodes here to adjust it. Let me just turn it back on so you see what I'm doing. See here, this node, rotation on Z-axis, is going to allow you to change the rotation of the HDRI, right? And here you can change the strength to, for example, 1.5, right, if you want to make it brighter. But again, you don't need to see that, so you can turn it off, and there you go. There's your HDRI set up. So let me just reset it to defaults, right? Remove the cube, go to 3D viewport here, collapse my nodes, right? Set my Blender the way I want. Go here, defaults, save startup file, and override. Every single time now you're gonna open your Blender, you're gonna open it with these settings. So you don't have to do it again and again and again. And these are the settings that Blender asks you on the beginning to import from another Blender. But if you're using other add-ons, for example, custom add-ons, like I'm going to show you in a minute, you don't want to do this because there could be changes in Blender coding which are going to interfere with this, and you're going to have problems, okay? So now what I'm going to show you is another add-on that you should install. It's a paid add-on, costs about $5. It's called Machine Tools, and it's really, really good. It's going to speed up a lot of stuff in Blender for you. And I got 2 massive videos that show how to use it, right? So it's called Machine Tools. Again, link in the video description. And on this example, I'm going to also show you how to install external add-ons in Blender because it's different. Get the add-on, download it, go to the place when you have it. And in previous versions of Blender, the way we used to install add-ons, I can show you in 3.6, for example. You used to go here, Preferences. You see there's no extensions, there's just add-ons. Install here and install from disk, right? In the later versions of Blender, so let's say 4.2, when you're gonna have extensions and add-ons, the way you're installing add-ons is you go here, go to add-ons, and click here and install from disk. In this version of Blender, actually you can do it, I think, from version 4.2. What you do is you drag and drop the add-ons. So you drag and drop it into the window, then you click OK, and it's installed. You can see on the bottom. And you can go to add-ons and check, right? So you can go to add-ons and type Machine Tools, you see, and it's installed. And even though you can still install from disk, I would not recommend it because Blender can get confused and tag your add-on for extension, and if it does that, you're gonna have Python errors. So you're gonna have conflicts with your add-on. So do not upload it in this fashion, simply drag and drop it. It's much better. Now, Machine Tools comes with everything turned off, okay? So when you install Machine Tools, most of the features are turned off. The only one that's working is going to be Mode Spy. Now I'm using a different version of Machine Tools. I'm using Deus Ex, which is a higher version, which is why you can see, for example, edge constraint here, which doesn't exist in the basic version. I suggest you get the Deus Ex version, is better. But let me tell you what essential tools you need to enable in order for this add-on to work properly. You want Smart VAT, Smart Edge, Face, Cleanup. You want Align, then you want Save Pie, Shading Pie. Actually, Shading Pie, you don't really need that. Views Pie, Alignment Pie, and this one. Now, if you don't know what these do, I'm not going to be explaining in this video. Like I said, I got 2 massive videos that explain that. Also, I'm using this add-on in every single of our courses, and we teach the basics of this add-on in Accelerator course, which I told you about in the beginning. So go ahead, get that course. It's superb. It's going to teach you a very efficient workflow for Blender hard surface. Everything is explained in that course, even principles of design and entire rendering process. So it's a fantastic course for beginners and intermediate Blender users. So go ahead, get it. Like I said, the link is in the video description. So once you're done with this, save preferences and you're good to go. 2 more things. One is going to be the panels. So when you press T and N in previous versions of Blender, let me show you. So I'm going to go to version 4.2. If I press T, you're going to see the T panel pops up. I never really use it, except for very rare cases. And you also have N panel, which is really useful because it's going to show you all the add-ons installed. And also you have the Tools and View menu, which is really important. In the 4.4 Blender, it's a bit different. So unless they change it, here's what's happening. Depends where your mouse is, you're going to see different results. So if my mouse is going to be to the left, you're going to see T panel popping. To the top is going to be Sculpting panel, and to the right is going to be End panel, I think. There we go. So you can use either N for End panel or T for End panel to open it when your mouse is to the right. I never use T panel, to be honest, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse it, and I'm going to simply save startup file because I don't need it. And that's all I'm going to do. And honestly, when I'm modeling, all I'm using is End panel. But when you're sculpting, this could be useful. So that's a new feature. And the last thing we're going to talk about is here on the End panel. You're going to go to View, and you see this clip start here. when let me actually show you, because it's gonna be easier to show you what I mean. Let's just grab a cube and set it to 1 meter, okay? If I'm going to zoom in, you will see that my view is clipping inside of the mesh. Depending on what kind of value you're gonna give here, it's going to be clipping sooner or later, right? So it's gonna determine how close to the object you can get. Now, by default, it's set to 0.01. This could cause issues with cycles. So when you're previewing something in cycles, and when you have two surfaces really close to one another, not on the same plane, but close to one another, they could be kind of Z-fighting against one another. It will seem there's kind of like a glitch on your mesh. This is also very apparent with decals. So what I would do here, I would switch it from 0.01 to 0.1. It's, in my experience, it's just better. All right, so that's all you do. Press N, collapse it, and then, you know, delete that cube. And then we're gonna go here to defaults, save startup file, and override. And the blender is set. So now every time you open your blender, you're gonna see this this UI. You're gonna see all these settings, and you don't have to do it again. One more time, if you're a beginner and intermediate and you really want to go in depth on Blender hard surface and you want to learn as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible everything you need to know and none of the fluff, get our course, the Hard Surface Accelerator, because it's superb. The course is not only really well structured, but it's also based on the feedback from our students, and we taught over the years well over 100,000 of them. So we have a lot of feedback, we have a lot of experience with this, so we know exactly how to present it and how to package it. So again, if you want to get into Blender as efficiently as possible and as quickly as possible, you could go through this course in literally a few days and know what's going on. So click on the link in the video description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.